President Trump and Joe Biden are back on the campaign trail today after the final presidential debate. The encounter was much more traditional and civil than their first debate. Today, President Trump is holding a rally in Florida. He plans to vote in the crucial battleground state tomorrow. And former Vice President Joe Biden is in Delaware, where he will speak about the coronavirus and economic recovery. Last night was the last time we will see the candidates face off before Election Day. CBS News correspondent Nicole Killian reports.
I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do.
As COVID cases rise across the country, President Trump praised his administration's response and teased a vaccine.
We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered.
He has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
The former vice president tore into the president's handling of the pandemic, pointing to the more than 220,000 Americans who have died.
Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as president of the United States of America.
The two argued over reopening the economy.
There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
Reaction? I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does.
Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it.
I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here.
Biden charged the president was not being stronger against Russia, as intelligence officials said both Russia and Iran are attempting to interfere in the election.
I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin. Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
While President Trump repeated his allegations about Biden and his family.
Your family got $3.5 million, and, you know, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get $3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia.
I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever.
Biden accused the president of trying to distract.
There's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage?
That's a typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing. And then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
North Korea. I'm not a typical politician.
Okay,
that's why I got elected.
The president again claimed he was preparing a health care plan.
So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care.
He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan.
President Trump was asked if his administration has a plan to reunite children separated from their parents at the border.
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Biden called the policy criminal.
What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go.
They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
The president, who at the last debate did not denounce white supremacy, was pressed about his rhetoric on race.
I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
The president pushed Biden on his plans on energy and the environment.
Would you close down the oil industry?
By the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would transition.
A big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a
because
big statement.
I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal. But
that's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
That. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. Over time.
And for more on all this, I want to bring in CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns from Nashville. Hi, Caitlin. So those last comments there, Biden later clarified them, those ones on the oil industry, saying that it is his plan to get rid of subsidies, but not fossil fuels. Explain exactly what he meant and why he felt he had to walk back those comments.
That's right. Well, this is certainly something that Republicans and the Trump campaign have seized on. We're hearing this over and over from the Trump campaign today, really focusing on that soundbite that you just played. The Biden campaign later clarified after the debate that the former vice president meant a longer phasing out and a suggestion of ending subsidies for the oil industry, not any sorts of bans, but ending federal subsidies. And they argue that that would take course over a period of time. And they also pointed to comments made by former President George W. Bush, essentially saying the same thing, that this is an industry that is going to kind of transition out. But you can tell the ways in which this is playing out politically, at least at this moment in time. The Trump campaign really looking and needing for ways to needle the Biden campaign. And we've also seen two Democratic congressional candidates in New Mexico and Oklahoma, where this is a big issue. Oil, of course, is a big industry. Separating themselves from Biden's comments. But the Biden campaign was trying to make clear today that this has to do with a transitional phasing out and has to do with ending federal subsidies.
Right. All right. Caitlin, we also heard from Biden's running mate, Kamala Harris, today about another issue that he's been repeatedly asked about, fracking. Here's what she had to say about whether or not he would ban fracking. Let's listen.
Let's be really clear about this. Joe Biden is not going to ban fracking. He is going to deal with the oil subsidies, but that's the president likes to put everything out of context. But let's be clear. What Joe was talking about was banning subsidies, but he will not ban fracking in America.
So, Caitlin, what do you make of those comments? And is the campaign's stance on fracking clear at this point?
Well, the former vice president's plan has been to not support any additional fracking on federal lands. But given that Kamala Harris had to talk about this today, it's something that the campaign has had to kind of put out these clarifying comments during the primary, during a debate. The former vice president suggested that he would support some kind of ban and had to kind of clarify those comments, that he's talking about a ban on new federal, new fracking on federal lands. But this is an issue that's really coming into a head in a key state of Pennsylvania. This is where both campaigns are really focusing on. Remember, in 2016, it was determined by just 44,000 votes. And for Republicans and for the Trump campaign, when we're talking about these issues, we're talking about jobs. For Democrats and the Biden campaign and supporters of the former vice president, when you're talking about these issues, you're talking about climate change. So that shows kind of how divided this issue can be and how narrowly focused it is on a particular set of voters. When we're talking about the Biden campaign, when they're playing for a place like Pennsylvania, they're not only playing for Philadelphia and the surrounding areas, they're trying to reach out to members of the Trump coalition, people who supported him in 2016. And on this issue, it could be a critical one in terms of the economy there. So that's why you've seen a focus on this issue and some of these clarifying statements.
And so, Caitlin, you were at the debate last night where we saw a very different temperament displayed by President Trump. How different would you say this debate was from the first one? And what are you hearing from both campaigns about how they think things went?
Very, very different from the first one, because we could actually hear the candidates. That threat of the mute button really helped to serve the actual debate. We actually had a debate. The president's goal going into last night was to not interrupt as much, to give Biden leeway to make some mistakes. And the Trump campaign argues that those comments that we were just talking about serve that purpose. The Biden campaign wanted to do basically nothing to upset the trajectory of this race. Remember, they're leading in key battleground states and have had a consistent lead. And that's important to note because this has been a wild year and this race has been relatively consistent. So did last night do anything to change the next several days, final days of this campaign? Well, the Trump campaign argues that the change in temperament, at least on the debate stage last night from the president, not only serves his campaign, but also some of those competitive down ballot races where Republicans are trying to hold on to Senate seats. Of course, there is always the argument that give the president a few minutes, an hour, the conversation could completely change and we could be talking about something entirely different later this afternoon. The Biden campaign is arguing just that even though we may have seen a temporary change in the president last night in terms of his behavior, they argue that that is not enough to move the needle at this point.
All right. Well, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much for joining us.